The question I got to ask is, if you're this guy and you get a 20-year felony for conducting a criminal enterprise to smuggle fake perfume, when you go to jail, is that getting you beat up more or less? The Imitation Nation podcast covers all things counterfeit, hosted by Shabir and Bersafdar of the Partnership for Safe Medicines and Sven Bergman of Venture Global. All statements are their own and not the opinions of their employers. All right, welcome to Imitation Nation, episode number 17, where we talk about counterfeit products in all their glory and terror. And there's so much news that we are going to do an entire news episode. It'll be a little shorter, but there's just too much to go through. There's a lot happening right now. There's a story this week about that was sort of I wouldn't call it an expose, but a lot of people don't know that Amazon did start a counterfeit crimes unit. We've debated on the podcast if it's complementary or competitive with brand holders' efforts. But what have you learned from this article and from recent activities of the Amazon CCU?
So, this interviews the director of the CCU unit for Amazon, and they talk about how the CCU unit has evolved, how has it grown, what their focus is now. And while it is good to kind of learn how, and it gives good best practices on what companies should do to help challenge counterfeit, when they still say what their biggest challenges are, which still are just the sheer size of the problem, and that they're heavily leveraging AI to get towards the resolution. What I'm still curious about, and I didn't hear that much in the interview, is I didn't hear a lot of addressing of the concerns I have heard from colleagues in brand protection that say, if you go to Amazon and say, hey, here's a case I have of 5 sellers, let's work it up and investigate it up the chain. I still hear that Amazon is not world-class for that yet. But having said that, the fact that they are had to put together a unit that focuses on it, that focuses on litigation that Amazon can do or support, speaks values to where Amazon has come from and gone to. And so I think that is very good. I still think that Amazon, considering its sheer size, could do more. From reports that I know, and it's not in there, it's not that many people. The size Amazon is, they could probably put 5,000 people in this division if they really would want to completely stomp it out. So it's a good interview. I think it's very informative. I don't know how much it really is of here's what we're solving versus how much of this is still PR repair by Amazon. So, but I'd give it a listen.
Cool. I'm going to skip down the list to the one that I really want to talk about, and we'll come back. So we're just going to just jump around the script here. I was actually at a concert the other night, and 2 songs in, the musicians came on the mic and were like, well, we juked the set list 2 songs into the concert. The next 2 hours is going to be pretty awesome. So researchers at the University of Brighton in England have come up with a new device to do detection of counterfeit medicines by detecting presence of API. And this technique is not particularly new. It's been around a long time. You'd be surprised how many regulatory officials don't have devices that do this. And I think the challenge of these things is not just getting them the devices, that's one issue, but getting them a library of what is supposed to be in every medicine. That's the real big issue. For example, I don't think that CBP has access to FDA's library or U.S. Pharmacopoeia's library of what the molecular profile of a blood thinner pill is supposed to have in it, right? They could have the machine, but without the profile of what the spectrometer is supposed to look like, it's hard to verify that medicine is real or not. But I think all the efforts to put more of these devices into people's hands around the world to reduce their cost is good. And so I'm going to make sure to put a link to this story in the show notes and tip my hat to the researchers at the University of Brighton for actually doing this work.
And I think there was, didn't we cover on a pod a couple of weeks ago, Lausanne or University in Lausanne doing something very similar, where without having to destroy the medicine the same, they were able to detect the active API. And so I love that. That technology to detect an API, so to speak, comes from really the law enforcement background, because street drug tests, field drug tests already existed, where you have a powder and you put a strip in it, or you put a spectrometer on it, and you can quickly say, yep, that's fentanyl. That's, the databases of narcotics we can find, and the database have to constantly be upgraded. And you're right, that didn't exist for regular medicines, because people probably really worried about letting them know what secret things to look for and making sure their formula is protected. But if those researchers can work it out with the pharmaceutical companies to share what ingredients they should be looking for, that could be an absolute game changer. I love that. It could even at one point in time, evolve into a consumer technology where a consumer can verify, is this Eliquis, right? Should I be taking this? So I think there's great potential. I love that they're doing this. And for anti-counterfeiting, it's fantastic. So,
Before I
yes,
walk away from this, I just want to make one point, which is that when you're really doing testing of medicine, and this is something I know a little bit about because I had to work with an economist to come up with what it would cost to test medicine imported from countries where the manufacturers were not supervised by the FDA.
mm-hmm.
And if you use a spectrometer, an API molecular detection technique, that will tell you if the sample has the molecule that you want. It will not tell you if it has enough.
Right.
And so that's a real issue, right? There's actually several other issues, which is, will it degrade in the proper way to release the right amount of medicine, or will your body just expel it as waste because it didn't fully digest before it went through your system? But not having enough is a great technique. You could, if you're trying to do this, you could in theory sprinkle a little bit of the active ingredient, but not enough to cost you any money as a counterfeiter in your
Yeah.
fakes. And you might be able to fool that first level of testing where it's, is there nothing in it or everything? And it is actually quite challenging sometimes to detect what the other item's in. As Dr. McCall on my board has told me, when he has bought medicine that came in illegally from illegal online pharmacies and tested it in his lab, he'll sometimes see a pop on the spectrometer graph of a substance, but not be able to know what it is. He's like, I know it shouldn't be there because the monograph for this medicine says there should not be that substance there, but I can't tell you what that is. And
Yeah.
so that's always a nerve-wracking thing where you're like, that may or may not be a problem, but I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to be there at all. Like, it could be something inert, or it could be a heavy metal. It's going to give you heavy metals poisoning when you take it.
100%. All right. In another short story, you want me to do another one?
Yeah.
Shout out to the Attorney General of Michigan. They did a enforcement, part of their force team counterfeit, or a force team, which focuses on investigations into suspected counterfeits. And what they did is they brought a strong enforcement action and litigation against sellers of counterfeit cologne and perfume. And they were selling those on very large platforms. They were selling this on Amazon. They were selling this on Walmart, on their platforms. Again, this is not Amazon and Walmart selling. This is the platforms that they have built that allow third-party sellers to sell on their platforms. But the AG came after those people, and I always follow counterfeit fragrances with quite a curious interest, because I get weekly or daily news alerts of large counterfeit perfume seizures overseas, right? So it's a big issue generally. Again, a product that's easy to counterfeit, you got to make it smell like something. Basically, put water in a bottle and fake the bottle, right? So these counterfeit products then can have severe health impacts. Like if you spray something on, it really shouldn't be on your skin. But the most amazing thing for me is that the AG has charged the individuals that were charged, they're currently accused, with felonies ranging from 5 years to 20 years of imprisonment for counterfeit goods. That is drastic. That is a big stick. Now, the reason why I like the story, obviously, love it when we take criminals away, love it when we charge hard, because hopefully it turns against for others. But the reason why I also like this, in the press release, the AG thanks Walmart, Amazon, for their cooperation. I think that's great. The more of these actions that happen where platforms really work with AGs, I think the platforms then also will take those learnings back and say, what can we do better internally that person would have never been on our platform, right? That they never had a chance to sell. What should have been the know your customer process that we have in place, where we made sure that no, this is not a legitimate seller of perfumes. They should not be on our platform. So I like the enforcement. I like the fact that Walmart and Amazon are cooperating. And I do think that those and we've seen a couple of them now, where folks are coming after sellers on large platforms. I think these large platforms will continue to look and say, hey, we got to get better about this, because their litigation risk increases for every one of these actions. At one point in time, an AG most likely will say, listen, you are either blind against it, or you're aiding and abetting. And so I think platforms, and this will always be my thing, I think platforms can and should do more. But big shout out to the Attorney General of Michigan. Wonderful investigation. And let's see what they get and how much they get convicted with and for.
The question I got to ask is, if you're this guy, you get a 20-year felony for conducting a criminal enterprise to smuggle fake perfume. When you go to jail, is that getting you beat up more or less? Are you viewed as more of a badass or more of a weakling as a result of being in jail for fake perfume?
I don't know. That's a good question. I can ask the next time I meet somebody that runs a jail. I'll let you know.
Or does someone say, you got 20 years for running a fake perfume operation? Like, you need a better lawyer. You love to see it. You love to see the criminal penalties for all of this. I want to talk about a story that CBS News covered, just from the sheer quantity of what happened here. There is a recall from a company named Sabrositos Hondureños LLC, and they recalled 32,000 pounds of meat products with a false USDA mark of inspection. It had this mark on it that says establishment, or EST.1785, and that is supposed to indicate that's the smallest amount of supply chain security you can have, where it came from, and such a thing does not exist according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So they basically were faking the source of the meat and did a massive recall, mostly of chorizo. And as an avowed carnivore, I didn't have to worry too much because I haven't had any chorizo in a while. But this is just a lot, and this was very open. You don't move 32,000 pounds of meat in like a small truck. This was an ongoing, long-running operation that in fact deserved the enforcement it got.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, that's gross, but more importantly, really deeply concerning. This for me goes back to kind of the discussion we had before. How much does a label and a sticker alone, if that's the only thing that you're counting on, really do, right? One of my biggest sticking points whenever I have folks that want to pitch us or want to pitch one of our clients on technology solutions is when I hear they're putting something on and then they call it track and trace. And many of these things are like, people will actually probably tell you in this context that they're able to do a recall because of track and trace. The USDA and tracking or tracing, they might be able to trace back once they have the code to figure out which plant it came from, but nothing is being tracked. And so, that's always the downfall with when you have a system like this that allows you to trace but doesn't track, because if I don't track it, I don't see it coming in. I only see it and can follow it back if somebody happens to figure out it is fake, and then you kind of go backwards, and or in this instance, hopefully not, but somebody would get sick where you go like, oh no, and then you trace it back. And the tracing, for a previous job and some clients, we've looked at various tracing systems. They get very, very imprecise very quickly, especially if you go through a broad distribution channel. And that's why you have these mass recalls, because it's not because they don't want to. They can't be more precise. They're like, yep, it's roughly this 1/4 of the US. Let's recall everything that came from there because that's the only ways we can trace it. So this is terrifying and makes me wonder how many of these other fake products are in my grocery carts right now.
Well, I will say that one of the beauties of doing a proper serialization system like the U.S. has done with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act is that mass recalls, because you don't know where the counterfeits are and which ones are real, is mostly a thing of the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
You find a batch of fake counterfeit medicines. Let's say you find 100, and they usually all have the same serial number. And so you just recall the serial number, which means there is probably one and exactly one unit of real medicine that gets taken out of the supply, not thousands or tens of thousands. And even if the criminals decide they're going to serialize their counterfeits and give them each a different serial number, you're still not taking a whole production run, a whole lot of medicine out of the supply. And I just think, I remember FDA official telling me that was one of the advantages and why they implemented it that way. And I didn't really appreciate it until I started seeing some of the GLP-1 counterfeits get detected, the Ozempic counterfeits. And I was like, wow, these medicines have been in shortage. And, it would be terrible right now to take 30,000 units out of the drug supply in order to get at 100 counterfeits that had the same lot number. It's just a great innovation, and it's really patient. It's about patient safety, really. It's a real patient safety benefit to not have to recall good medicine.
Yeah, and the FDA and their process, since again for the previous job we looked a lot at track and trace. They kind of cut a great balance with it, because with their track and trace, it's kind of like a one step forward, one step back. So I know where it came from, know who I give it to. It's not like a FedEx where real time track it through. Like I can't tell you exactly where that pill is, but I can easily know one step forward, one step back. And everybody, second advantage, closed supply chain, which means the only people allowed to play are folks that are actually licensed and registered in that space. And so I think the FDA, agree with you, in the pharmaceutical space, had a beautiful balance. In the food industry, that hasn't happened. It's a fully open supply chain. Anybody can supply food in, basically. And then, folks apparently fake these labels now. So, wow. Well, thanks for ruining dinner tonight, Shabir.
Do you want to do one more story before we go?
I'm going to do one more quick one. That will be a light one, but I just love it because sometimes counterfeiters are just so brazen, it is crazy, and it combines with my passion for fast cars. There is a new Lamborghini energy drink that is out there. Problem is, Lamborghini didn't launch it, nor did Lamborghini give the person that launched the energy drink the license to use their trademark. And it is started being sold in February 2025. In Asia, they actually launched the drink with huge fanfare, and the logo is exactly the Lamborghini logo, uses it's typeface, everything, and they are selling it all over Asia. And Lamborghini has been issuing strong press releases against it and is currently in the process of litigating against it. What will be interesting to see, and I don't know this, is does Lamborghini have the trademark rights in China fully, wholly, very tightly? The Chinese trademark process is not the tightest. And as a defense, the person that launched the mark said that no, they received the rights from somebody that at one point in time had a license, and the license was transferred to them. And so that is what the entire lawsuit will be about, which is, yes, Lamborghini at one point in time gave somebody a license to produce something else. Is that person under Chinese law allowed to resell that license, and can that other person now do the drink? So it will be a very interesting one. But I just love it that they're like, yeah, this is great, and I'll just sell it. Or it could be an innocent mistake, and they thought, I actually do have a license, and that's awesome, I'll sell it. So, but yes, Lamborghini not happy. And if you happen to see that drink, it will not give you superpower or horsepower. It's just fake.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to us on this episode of Imitation Nation number 17. Sven, any last thoughts?
If any of our listeners, because sometimes I get texts, want for us to cover a story, let us know. Like, I'd love to hear, hey, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. Because Shabir and I, we see certain things. We talk to a lot of folks. If there's a story you want for us to cover, send it either to us if you have our addresses personally, or to, where do you want for them to email it to? Shabir, do we have a contact email?
Just respond in the comments on LinkedIn on our Imitation Nation page, and we look forward to covering your story.
Shabir, do you want to read us out?
The Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner. Podcast production by Anna Rowland, management by Sarah Ember Safdar, and theme music written by Jonathan Boyle.